Every choice you make communicates something to a guest or to a prospective guest. So everything from your logo, your price point, your menu, the lighting, the uniforms, the language you use to talk about your product, your website, on and on and on.
Thank you for listening to Serves You Right. My name is Andrew, and today I got a chance to talk to Chip Klose of Restaurant Strategy. We talk about marketing and how to run and how to think about your restaurant, his ABCDE method for really grasping the fundamentals and figuring out what exactly you need to do to put yourself out there as a restaurant, and so much more. It was a pleasure to get to sit down and talk to Chip. I have seen him on social media for years, and now I got to know him. So thank you again, and here is Serves You Right. Well, Chip Klose, thanks for joining us. The man behind Restaurant Strategy podcast, Restaurant Strategy, pretty much everything. Author of Restaurant Marketing Mindset, and our guest today on Serves You Right.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I do have a question to start this off. Why are you stalking me on Instagram? I see you all over the place. I might just be the demographic you're trying to reach, but where did you come from, and why do I see you in my feed like twice a day?
So let's start with your first question, which is why do you see me all the time? It's probably because I have a very dedicated and capable marketing team, and we're very good at following people around who connect with us in one way or another. So that's the easy answer, is that we've told the computers to do it. Where did I come from is sort of a deeper conversation. I can go as deep as you want me to.
Sure. No. For the guests listening at home, I think it'd be helpful to find out what got you started and how you got into this business.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chip Klose. I'm a restaurant coach. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Restaurant Strategy. So Restaurant Strategy does a bunch. We've got the podcast. As of today's recording, 14 episodes have been released. We have a membership site called Restaurant Foundations. I give talks, I host live events throughout the year, and then we host something called the P3 Mastermind. So it's a group coaching program for restaurant owners, specifically geared towards growing independent restaurant owners, people who struggle with profitability. So they need to dial in profitability before they really scale the business. So they've got 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 locations. I think our biggest group has like 9 locations, but they can't go any further until they dial that operating profit in. So that's what I do. I moved to New York City in 2002 to be an actor. And so what do you do as an out-of-work actor? You get a job in a restaurant. And for many, many years, I had 2 parallel careers. So I would do theater. I acted, I directed, I wrote. And every time I would come back from a gig, I'd come back and work back at the restaurants. And at a certain point, I looked back, and my acting resume, my theater resume was okay. And my restaurant resume was lights out. I had 13 Michelin stars in my resume at this point, worked with 3 different James Beard Award winners. I did a series of openings, and I was like, maybe I should double down on this thing. And by that point, I'd really fall in love with the industry, sort of the creativity, the people I met, sort of the energy of it. And so that's when I started building my own company as an agency and a consultancy, and now as a coaching program for restaurant owners. Restaurant Strategy is the company. I founded in 2016 under a different name, and it certainly looked different than it looks now. But constant evolution, and it's looked this way with the coaching and the membership and all of that for, I'll say, the last 5 years. That's where I came from, and that's what I do now.
That's a good 20,000 foot view there. That it is funny. It was something I was hoping you'd touch on. You are now the second person to come on the podcast who, to follow their dreams, went to New York pursuing a theater passion and ended up working in restaurants to support themselves, and then veered off and realized that the thing paying the bills was the thing that maybe they should focus on.
Well, and can I pause there for just a second?
Sure.
Let me just say really quickly that there are 2 kinds of people, I think, that work in restaurants. Number one, people who are dying to be a part of it, people who went to culinary school or really came into it, which admittedly isn't a lot of people in this country, right? And in Europe, it's a much more desirable career path, and certainly other parts of the world. But in the United States, not so much. So there are two kinds of people who very much want to do this for a living. And then the rest of us, I think, who took the back door or a side door into the industry. And I think it's like an 80-20 split. And I think it's not 80-20 the way we think. I think 20% of the people in the industry are dying to be a part of it, wanted to be a part of it for a long time. And I think the majority of people sort of took the back door in. In fact, one of the things that I think we can be better about doing is making people know that this is a really valid career path, that there are opportunities, that the barrier of entry is very low, that there's a lot of promotion and opportunity for development. And certainly, I came into it as a means to an end, right? Just as a way to pay the bills, as a day job. And it was through working with very smart, capable, accomplished people who saw something in me, probably saw something that I didn't see, and gave me opportunities that I probably shouldn't have been given. I opened my first Michelin restaurant at 24. I mean, I had a Michelin star on my resume at 24, opening that thing from scratch. And like, I shouldn't have been in that room, but somebody saw something in me. So I think it's much more common than we would like to admit. And I wish we just talked about it more.
Sure. I do want to double click on that comment that, maybe they saw something in you and maybe you shouldn't have been there. And I often feel like people that get lucky, that, get in on these early openings and maybe they are getting thrown into the deep end before they're ready, say. I always remind myself that it has to be someone, because I got a very similar chance where I never should have been behind the bar. Most of my trajectory has been bartending and then the somm side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But, I happened to be there and I offered to be a bar back and it just worked out. And someone said, let's take a shot on this kid. And sometimes it just being willing to show up and being present is half the battle. And so you got to give yourself credit where you kept showing up.
I think that's true. And part of this is the way I was raised, right? Like my dad is really big on, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it to the best of your ability. And I can't do something half-assed. And that's just part of me and sort of how I'm wired and how I was raised.
And if it's worth doing, you might as well do it, Yeah.
That's how I feel. But listen, not everybody feels that way. And there are plenty of people who slog through. Interestingly, one of the things that I fell in love with in the theater was sort of the creative pursuit. And at a certain point, it became not creative for me. I was auditioning for shows and it was like, we need you to fit the costumes. You're going to do what we tell you to do. There wasn't a lot of sort of creativity or autonomy, interestingly enough. And the reason I bring it up is because I was finding a lot of those opportunities in the restaurant industry. When I was opening restaurants, it was like, well, what do you think we should do? It was like, oh, well, I think it'd be really cool, ... fill in the blank. I was being asked for my opinion. I was asked to create things way more than I was being asked in the theater world, which is probably, if I'm honest, why I fell in love with it, not why I decided to click over into that trajectory. It was the sort of the creative pursuit that made it really worthwhile for me.
Yeah, and you have to ask yourself, if you had been more improv versus theater, if you had that expression, maybe that wouldn't have happened. But yeah. It is interesting. We use the terminology of the theater in describing service often. You are on stage, you're running a ship, you're doing a performance, and more or less. Like there is crossover, but in the theater setting, you're not going to sit down. No one's going to ask you, do you think we should switch act 2 and 3? You don't have that, but you just don't. Yeah.
100%. And I think if you present yourself as capable, and engaged, I think people will ask you your opinion, or there will be opportunities for you to put some ideas forth. 100%.
One thing that we didn't really touch on in your past, I think is kind of a big part of what you do now, and it's certainly the book, marketing. So where did marketing become such a big deal for you?
Okay, so here we go. We have to cross over and talk about theater. So I came to the city in 2002. I continued working gigs 2002, 2003, 2004. 2005 or so, I clicked over, was directing a lot more, and I started producing. From 2005 to 2010, I ran an off-Broadway theater company that I founded. And guess what you have to do? When you create a great show, you got to figure out how to get people to the show.
I learned...
Butts and seats. It's guess what? It's the same thing. And we've got the same thing as a plane, as a hotel, as a restaurant. We've got expiring inventory, right? If the seats aren't filled when the plane takes off, it's just lost revenue. Same thing. If the show starts with the seats unfilled, it's just lost revenue. I had to learn I had to learn how to market. And over the course of 2006, 7, 8, I'll say, I was producing off-Broadway, original off-Broadway musicals. And I fell in love with marketing and I started going really, really deep. So now, again, my theater career had sort of transitioned a little bit and I was still working in restaurants. And what became really obvious was that restaurants either didn't market at all or they didn't market very well. So I would say around 2012 or so, I became really, really interested in how restaurants can market. And then in 2016, that's really how I started my company because I looked around and I just said, man, restaurants aren't marketing at all or aren't doing it very, very well, meaning their websites weren't done well. They weren't thinking about how to capture emails and grow their list. They weren't being intentional with how they grew their email. They weren't managing their listings. They weren't running ads on Meta, on Google. They weren't fully leveraging their in-store collateral, all these things. And I just went, famously, I tell the story. That's how I started my company. I just said, I don't really make that much money in restaurants. I don't think anybody gets into restaurants to make a lot of money. But I was like, I don't really make a lot of money. So can I make not a lot of money in a more creative way? That's really when I started my company. And it really acted as an agency. I leveraged my network. I reached out to people that I knew had good restaurants, but weren't marketing very well. And I said, hey, can I do your marketing for you and basically keep me on a monthly retainer? We'll work for 6 months at a time. If you like what I'm doing, you renew for another 6 months. And that's how I started my company, little by little. Again, building websites, growing people's email list, running their email campaigns, running their listings, managing their Google My Business, running ads on Meta, on Google, and everything else that was involved there. That's how I started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. It's just a necessity that you learned kind of in the trenches.
I had to figure it out in the theater world. And I realized that so many people weren't trying to figure it out in the restaurant world. So that's what I did pretty much from 2016 to 2020 until the pandemic came. I was just running marketing for restaurants all in and around New York City.
That's awesome. That is, I never thought of the connection between like shows and restaurants. And, restaurants, it's very physical. Like, I always say you can't make money on the food you throw away. Like you have to get people in and you have to give them this food and you can see the results of failure. Whereas with a theater, you don't see it, but it hurts as much. You have an expiring product, it's just an empty seat. It's like the reverse. Mm-hmm. It's
the same thing. And any hotel, I've opened a handful of hotels over my career. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. A director of sales or a GM of a hotel is just like, they just can't talk about the empty rooms, right? Like people go to bed with nobody asleep. People go to sleep without people asleep in a handful of beds over them. And it's like, they can't get that 8 hours of sleep back. Mm-hmm. That's what they need. That's what they're selling.
I guess, I run a steakhouse and it'd be like me seeing us throw away some steaks that went bad. It'd be like, oh God.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
It's totally true. It's the same thing. We've got very unique issues in restaurants. It's funny. I talk about this all the time now. It made my way into my second book, which I know we're going to spend some time talking about my first book. I'm just in the process of going through the editing process of the second book.
I was going to say, I did not see a second book. Yeah.
No, not yet. It'll be out by the end of the year, I hope.
Got it. I'm sorry to interrupt. This will be fast, I promise. If you're still listening and you like this, please take a second, go and tap that like button. It means the world to me, and it really does help us spread. All right, back to the story.
One of the things I talk all about is sort of the unique nature of our industry. So back when I was in grad school, I got my MBA, and I was doing a project early on in my very first semester. And some guy asked me, my partner said, why are you here at school at 40, right? Like I went back to school at 40. He's like, why are you getting your MBA at 40? I was like, I just think there's some things I need to know. He's like, no, but really, why? And I was like, okay, I'll tell you why. I've worked in restaurants for my entire career. We're busy every single night. And I look at enough P&Ls to know that we just don't make any meaningful money. And I just don't understand. I feel like there's an answer there. So that's the question I want answered. And he literally said, I talk about this in the book and I talk about this on stage when I talk about this stuff a lot. He said, that's because you guys have these like 3 moving targets. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, there are issues you have, and he worked at the Campbell Soup Company. And he said, the problems you have in restaurants, we don't have at Campbell Soup, meaning revenue, COGS, and labor are your three moving targets, right? Meaning you have no idea how many people are going to come in or exactly what they're going to order. And so you're not sure exactly how much each person is going to spend. Because of that, revenue is a moving target, to say nothing of world events or weather impacting your revenue. He's like, revenue is a moving target for you. You're not exactly sure. And because of that, you don't know how to schedule and you're not exactly sure how to order, right? I think I'll order a bunch of ribeyes because I think people are going to want ribeye. But if everybody's in the mood for a filet, well, then you're sitting on ribeye or lobster or whatever it is. He says, so because revenue is a moving target, so is COGS, right? Mm-hmm. The product you bring in, especially when it expires and it's expensive, that can be dangerous. And the same thing with labor. Hey, I'm going to staff up because I think Thursday is going to be busy. And if I'm wrong, if it, for whatever reason, turns out not to be busy, then, then you're sort of screwed and that it impacts your profitability in a meaningful way. And he said, the Campbell Soup Company, we have the exact opposite issue. He said, so I've got salespeople running around selling our cans of soup months in advance. So maybe a quarter ahead of time, we know how many pallets or how many cans of soup we've sold. So revenue is not a question mark. We know how much revenue is coming in. So therefore, I know how many cans to order and I know how much product I need to fill those cans. Likewise, I know how many people are required to run the line to get that many cans off the line. So revenue, COGS, and labor are not our issues. He said, we have other issues, but those are not our issues. Mm-hmm. The things that really keep you guys up at night in the restaurant industry. And I was like, mind blown. Yeah. There's my education like 3 months in.
Those are three pretty big issues to keep in mind all at once. Yeah.
It's everything. I mean, COGS plus labor equals prime cost. Certainly anyone listening to this podcast knows we live and die by prime. Oh, yeah. And so, understanding revenue and how to hit our revenue targets, and then therefore keep our COGS and labor in line with that. It's the whole ballgame.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think just to kind of zoom in on this too, because I think it'd be useful using my restaurant as an example. This week, because we're filming this, even though it'll be released a little bit later, is the first full week after the New Year's Eve. And so if you look at my sales this week versus last week, it's about 50%. And this, sure. I mean, we're also like slightly down from last year, but I can tell from our reservation provider that we actually are busier than the restaurants around us. But it's just the nature of the business that on New Year's Eve, we're going to have 400 people. And on the Tuesday, the week after New Year's Eve, we're going to have 80 covers. And it just, that is how it is. And to order meat, we actually have an Excel sheet that we pull our units sold of different cuts for the past 4 weeks, put it in the top, and we do an average plus a slight growth. That we also have a couple other variables, expected level of busyness. Sure. Like this is a whole thing just to output one order, to kind of regularize our inventory because it is so variable and
it's guesswork.
It is. And
it's guesswork. I mean, that's all forecasting is. It's fortune telling.
Yeah. I begged people to work last week and I'm begging people to stay home this week. And it's just that is what it is.
100%. That's why our business is so hard. But I like to embrace that. I think it was easy. Everybody would do it and our market would be saturated and all of, it would be that much harder for us to do it. So for those of us who are in it and love it and get to do it, I think it's a privilege. I think difficult things also make it worth doing.
For sure. And, it's one of those things where a lot of people get to try it a lot because unlike with Campbell Soup or unlike with any one particular product, everyone has to eat at some point on a long enough time horizon. So there is demand worldwide. Now, not even demand, it's spread out and not everyone wants a restaurant with sushi and hot dogs, but there is demand and
so can we pull at that thread just a little bit more?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
To use your phrase, let's double click on that. Because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this in the last, I'll say 12 to 18 months. Everybody's got to eat. You're right. We eat, if we're lucky, 3 square meals, right? Like I know I got hungry this morning. I know I'm going to get hungry later today. And you're absolutely right. 100 years ago, people dined out, like food service, like food outside of the home, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. I mean, if you go back and look at it, 100 years ago, for the most part, the average U.S. resident dined out 2 or 3 times a year. Now, if you look at the statistics, it says 2.5 times a week. Now, food service, including Uber Eats, DoorDash, takeout, the pizza place, the nice restaurant. The fact that anybody utilizes our services, because they could certainly feed a family of four for much cheaper, right? You do the math, chicken, broccoli, rice. You can go to the supermarket, feed a family of 4 or 5 for less than $20. Good luck feeding one person at a restaurant for less than $20. And so I think it's incredible. What we offer is a luxury, right? It's an indulgence that really nobody needs, but from time to time, people want. Either they are tired, they are busy, they forgot to shop, they don't feel like shopping, they don't feel like cooking and cleaning up. So consumers leave their house and say, okay, can you give some thought to the menu? Can you go shop? Can you prep? Can you cook everything for me? Can you get me all the other stuff I'll need, like a glass of wine or a beer or whatever? And then at the end of it, can you just clean up afterwards? Like, that's incredible. And that enough people every single night say, yeah, I'd like you to do all the work, and we get to do, right? It's not the work we have to do, it's the work we get to do. That I think that's incredible. And I'll go one further and say, the fact that we go out to dinner for dates, right? What do we do when we go out for a date? We go out to dinner, or we get a drink, or we go get coffee. Like, food service is the thing we do. What do we do when we celebrate an anniversary or birthday? We go out to dinner. What do we do before we go to the theater or a movie? We go out to dinner. Like, the fact that we go out to eat culturally, like that's what we do, and we just take it for granted. And I'm spending a lot of time. This is where I say, like, over the last 12 to 18 months, I'm trying to pay very careful attention to culturally what we do. And man, like, how incredible it is that that's what we do, because it could be something totally different. In another alternate universe, we could say, well, the thing we do for our birthday is fill in the blank. I don't know. But it's not. What most people do is we go out to dinner. We go to celebrate. If it's a kid's birthday, we take them out for pizza. If it's a 40th birthday, man, we go out for a nice restaurant. But the thing we do is go out and order food prepared by somebody else. And I think that's incredible.
Yeah. No, it's a luxury masquerading as a necessity. And so it's easy to convince yourself that we've got to eat. Have you ever read Brian Duff, his restaurant object series?
No.
Oh, highly recommend it. He's this awesome author. He does an investigation of the cultural impact and kind of position and how people talk and think about restaurants. Fascinating book, especially if you're in the industry. But he describes how restaurants kind of occupy this weird in-between space. We all have this desire to connect, but we don't want to be smothered. We all have this desire to be provided for, but we want to have self-sufficiency. And somehow it intersects all these lines. And it's like, it is the thing we do to celebrate. It's the thing we do when we're sad and happy. And yeah, exactly what you're saying.
Amazing, right? I mean, to your point, right? Like, what do we do when we want to cheer ourselves up? We go to the bar. Like, it's just, I think it's incredible. And I think I'm really grateful for that. Like, this would just be that much harder. We don't have to convince people to go out for their birthday. We just have to convince people to pick us as opposed to any of the other, right? Seth Godin always talks about this. He says, the marketer loses when they have to convince a consumer of two things at the same time. So it's like, I got a new coffee shop. So I'm out on the street and I'm trying to shill, trying to get people in there and say, hey, listen, excuse me, do you drink coffee? And somebody says, no, I really don't like coffee. And they're like, oh, well, you really should drink coffee. It smells great. It's really great. Wakes you up in the morning. And when I convince you of that, let me convince you to come over here to my coffee shop. It's ludicrous when we say it out loud, right? Better to find somebody, say, hey, do you like coffee? Yeah, I love coffee. Perfect. Can I just get you to come check out my place, right? You find the people walking down the street with Starbucks cups and say, hey, you look like a coffee drinker. Can I suggest that sometime this week you just try something else, give something else a try? So it's like the fact that we don't have to convince people of two things, that they're already convinced that they want to go out, that they're convinced that they want to celebrate in this way. We just have to convince them to celebrate with us is amazing. And we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same idea as someone who runs a restaurant is interested in restaurants on Instagram. Chip Klose's media team is going to follow him because he already check marks all those boxes. So might as well just follow that guy around and see if he'll double click on us. Yeah.
Which gets into marketing, right? So I know we're going to have a conversation about marketing, but the way I think about marketing, so if there's anything I do really well, or there's something I pride myself on, it's simplifying ideas. It's distilling things down, not because I think that people are dense, but because that's how I need it. I need, like, okay, what is this? Like, the reason I think most people don't market, or most restaurants don't market well, is because they overcomplicate it. So I see it as my job to simplify it. So, I walk around saying, okay, listen, marketing is really only two things. It's getting people to raise their hand and then getting them to change their behavior. So if anybody visited any of my pages, my website, if they connected with me in any one way, they've raised their hand. They're saying, hey, I like what you do, or I'm curious about this, or I'm interested in this, or something you said resonated, or whatever. Basically the marketing is set up to assume that that's a signal, that that's somebody raising their hand, in which case my job then is to get you to change your behavior, meaning listen to my podcast as opposed to any of the other amazing podcasts that are out there. Or, instead of banging your head against the wall, join my program and let us help you implement the systems to be more profitable. Or instead of, any number of a thing. I'm just trying to get them to change their behavior. And all marketing, whether it's Apple, Nike, restaurant, or me and my coaching programs, we're all just trying to get people to change their behavior, raise their hand, change their behavior.
Yeah. Just to start digging into the book, your intro to definition of marketing, you kind of have a different thing. You say it's 3 questions. What's the product?
3 questions.
Who's it for? How can we reach it? The raising the hand and getting them to change the behavior is kind of like who's it for and how can we reach them?
That's right. So the definition for marketing, if you ever actually Google, and I dare the listeners to actually Google like the AMA approved definition for marketing, it is word salad. It's a whole bunch of words thrown together that probably explain what marketing is, but it lacks clarity and it lacks simplicity. In the very beginning of the book, I say, what is marketing? Marketing is really just answering 3 questions. What is your product? Who is that product for? And how do you reach them? It's when I present this on stage, I say, here's the definition for marketing, write it down. It is a mantra. What's the product? Who's it for? How do you reach them? And then usually I put up the next slide, which is, put another way, we're trying to get people to raise their hands, trying to get people to change their behavior. They go hand in hand, but yes, the 3-question definition for marketing is the only way to move forward. It simplifies it down, and then you go, okay, well then, man, what is our product? Right? And who is this? Who would this product be for? Right? The answer is not everybody, by the way. It's like, what's our product? Who's that for? If we figure out who it can be for, who needs something, we can craft a product for that person. And then we can spend all the rest of our time figuring out, okay, how do we reach them? I do the same thing with my coaching programs. Well, I can run this kind of ad. I can run that kind of ad. I can go to a trade show. I can do a conference. I can, get them on my email list. I can run a podcast. I can have a YouTube channel. There's infinite number of ways to reach them. But I first have to figure out who my product's for, what that product is, how it helps them. And then I can figure out all different ways to tell them. Same thing with a restaurant.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, but on your side, it's not, steakhouse with lobster. It's for well-off people. We're going to reach them through email marketing. It's who are these people? People that want to improve their restaurant, who feel stuck, who would Google, figure 8 or how to fix service in restaurant. And then, bam, there you are. Yeah.
It's the same thing with a makeup company. It's the same thing with consumer electronics. It's the same thing with sportswear. I mean, it's the same thing. Figuring out what people want, figuring out what makes you uniquely qualified to provide them with that, right? Like how many steakhouses are there in any given market? There's so many options out there. And so then how do you stand out? How do you convince them to come to yours as opposed to another one? Well, you've got to differentiate yourself, which is all what the first part of that book is really interested in.
Yeah. No, and, I feel like there is kind of a pushback and a suspicion of overly simple systems. Simplifying things gives you an ability to really latch on to what's essential. I feel like a lot of people get frozen stuck and just do nothing due to the complexity and overwhelm of just like, I don't even know where to begin. All right, marketing's on the back burner, just like you said. It's
It's I think simple is best, right? I'm going to bastardize it, but what is it? When we to make sure that you really learn something, right? You teach it to someone, you have them repeat it back, you have them do it for you, and then you have them teach it to somebody else. And it's only when you could teach it to somebody else. And so I'm always thinking, even as a restaurant operator, I'm always thinking about how to give them the words they need to go market my restaurant for me. So if I put out really good marketing, really beautiful photos or ads or whatever, right, and I get you to come in for dinner, what my job then is to give you a really easy way to go talk about that restaurant experience later.
Yeah.
And so it's the equivalent of teaching someone and getting them to go teach it, right? So much of it, one of the most powerful tools out there is word of mouth. So how do I make word of mouth? How do I make it intuitive and natural and like inevitable? And part of that is giving them things that they can't help but go talk about. Like, oh my God, you'll never believe this, right? So again, at the time of this recording, it's early January. I just got back from a 2-week trip to Thailand. One of the things we did in Thailand is we spent a day playing with elephants. So we fed them, brushed them, bathed them, spent the day with
sick.
elephants.
Yeah.
Guess what I'm talking about when I come home? I'm not talking about the plane ride. I'm not talking about my cab ride. First thing, they're like, so how was the trip? I was like, it was amazing. We did so many things. Did I tell you we spent a day with at this elephant conservation? Did I tell? Okay, I got to tell you about this. It's the first thing we talk about because it is that amazing. So same thing is true with your restaurant. And I think this is becoming more and more true now than it ever has been. Your restaurant has to give people something that they can't help but talk about so that they leave and they go, oh my God, it was crazy. We went off this pizza place, but did you know, blah, 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 blah. Whatever follows from there. And it doesn't have to be jaw dropping. It doesn't need to be like a 3 Michelin star experience. It doesn't have to be, but it's got to be something. I was talking about this pizza place we used to have in Brooklyn near where we lived, and they didn't cut the pizza. Instead, they gave everybody these giant kitchen shears. It was like, hey, how do we pizza's pizza? It lies there flat. It sits on the table. So what are we going to do to get it talked about? So you talk about Franny's, and to this day, people still know what Franny's is. And oh yeah, and they used to give you these kitchen shears. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, giving people it was like they were 10-inch chef knives, held together with a little nut. They were dangerous and they were amazing, and it was a way to get you to talk about Franny's.
That was the restaurant I lost my finger in. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that just kind of building off that. So a lot of my background has been in the SOM space and studying for sommelier certifications. And a lot of my journey has actually come from helping other people get through that program, because you train them, you teach them, you coach them, and then you watch. I've got a couple of servers now that I've gotten through. When I lived in New Mexico, helped a lady get through. It's just, you learn more in teaching than you ever do studying for yourself somehow. And one of the biggest advices they give you when it comes to studying always is make sure not to just regurgitate the information verbatim, but to take it in, put it in your words, even if it's only a slight change. You almost need that struggle and reinterpretation of the fact to get it to stick. And then on the idea of getting people to talk about the restaurant, this is something I tell all my servers about Louis XIII. Super expensive brandy. We have the crystal glasses, and we don't have them because they really enhance the flavor. We enhance them because they can cheers and they make this really loud clinking sound that fills the whole dining room. We have the silver trays that we carry out, and it's a moment that they remember, and it's a moment that people around see and tell people about. It's it creates an experience, and it's
a ritual. It's saying this is not normal, that there's something sacred about this. I used to work with one of my mentors. He used to say all the time, he's like, if you don't get dressed up for your anniversary, there's nothing I can do over the course of this meal. You dressing up is saying this is something worth it. You're meeting me halfway, and then everything else we do from here on out. And again, we sort of were raised in fine dining, New York City. It's then everything we do can meet you where you're at, can meet you as the guest with your expectations and your anticipation and excitement about what's coming. But if you're wearing jeans and a t-shirt out for your anniversary, well, you've already said you're having a jeans and t-shirt kind of meal. And there's nothing wrong with that. But part of that elevated thing, we talk about, again, Louis XIII is a great example. We can think of it, when we talk about, chartreuse, right? The story of chartreuse and sort of the mystique behind it, the mythology behind it, right? It sort of leads into wine it does this so well, right? A wine with a good story gets sold more than a superior wine with no story. Mm-hmm. So the label's a story, the shape of the bottle's a story, what they chose to do, the winemaker, the land. It's like if we're just talking about sort of like the age of vines and clones and
the titratable acidity. Yeah. Okay, sure.
Like
yeah.
What Lee's contact does to the wine. I mean, somebody's sitting there going like, okay, like I mean, I can I understand what Lee's contact does to to a certain wine, but that's not what you're like, so actually this is a third generation whatever, and the daughter just took it over when she was 17, and that's what I'm remembering. Like, and I think great products have great stories. And I think that's so much of what we try to do in restaurants is just identify the things that make us really exceptional, unique, remarkable, and find a way to get our guests as excited about that as we are. Certainly Louis Trace is like, man, this is gratuitously expensive. I can explain to you why it is, or I can but like gratuitously expensive, or Pappy, or like anything, right? So like, I could talk to you about what that is when, people then decide whether they spend their money on that or not. But like, here's the story. And I think the same thing is true with our restaurants. And I think it's only becoming more important.
All right. Before we get too far, let's talk about the A, B, C, D, E. So we've kind of hit A quite a bit with the audience.
Yep.
But yeah, going on B's brand.
Yeah. So for everybody who's out there doesn't know, there are a couple of sort of frameworks, right? Because if you write a book, you got to come up with these frameworks. You have to come up with things that make it really easy to remember.
Hooks to put your hat on, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So my definition for marketing, the 3 questions, that's sort of where the book starts. And then I introduce the entire first part of the book is what I call the ABCDs of marketing. And it's the fundamental piece, the foundational piece of marketing that most people just skip right over, that they jump to marketing channels and tools, right? So I say, hey, tell me about your marketing. They're like, okay, yeah. So we post to Facebook and Instagram 4 times a week. We do TikTok 3 times. I send 1 email every other week. And I'm like, whoa.
Who are you talking to?
No. Let's back up.
Yeah.
Who you talk competition and differentiation. So A, audience, it's asking the question, who has a problem that you're uniquely qualified to solve? I always say the audience is at the heart of our definition. I mean, literally, what's the product? Who is it for? How do we reach them? I mean, the who is right in the middle. It's literally wedged in at the heart of the definition. So that's why we start with audience. It's right 2 ways to market, right? We either, come up with a product and then go try and find people for the product. Or we look around and we look at our audience, we look at a community or a group of people or a type of person, and we say, is there something they need? And it's a much more compelling, much more effective way of marketing to look around and see who needs something and then craft a solution for them. So we say, audience is asking the question, who has a problem that you're uniquely qualified to solve? Then B is brand. Brand is your restaurant, your experience. The experience you're crafting is the solution to someone's problem. So understanding, like, actually, what is it that you crafted? So we look at our audience, we say, hey, people like this in my neighborhood need this kind of place. Okay, well, then I've created, and then you define it. So the level of dining, the price point, the vibe, you literally put words to the thing that you're going to create or the thing that you have created. And that becomes really, really important to say, this is what people need, and I have created a solution to fill that need. And that's the first part of the ABCDs of marketing. A is audience, who has a problem. B is your brand. That's the solution. You craft a solution to the problem.
Who needs it? What do they need? Basically.
Yeah. Because, I mean, and you can say this, right? So you brought up the steakhouse because that's where you're at now. If I say, hey, I'm going to open a steakhouse. So I live here. I spent most of my career in New York City. I live just outside New York City. Let's say, hey, I'm going to open a steakhouse in New York City. It's like, okay, I think that's a city that doesn't.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's a city that really needs any more steakhouses because we have old famous ones. We have new, stylish, fancy, right? So we've got the old Smith & Wollensky. We've got the corporate ones like Del Frisco and Ruth's Chris. We've got the new fancy ones like STK and all. We've got the one I always use is Skirt Steak. So it was opened by Laurent Tourondel just before the pandemic. And then they really hit their stride through and coming out of the pandemic. But literally, they only have one item on there. It's just a bistro cut, just a skirt steak. And it's the same price. You get that, you get a salad, and you get fries, and then you can buy additional things. You could buy wine, you could buy appetizers, you could buy desserts, but like that's it.
Mhm.
They're basically saying like, why would you want to come here? So he answered the question, why do we need another steakhouse? He said, because I think we need one at a lower price point that's simpler to execute, that, fills a certain kind of demographic. You're not taking clients there. It's not that kind of vibe. It's a different kind of steakhouse. So anytime you come with something to the market, you have to look around and say, man, there's a lot of steakhouses, but they're really expensive. So could we open one that's cheaper? And like, what would that look like? And that's what Chef Turandel did when he opened that. So when you come to a market, it's operating into the assumption that the market already exists, meaning there are already restaurants or upscale steak restaurants. And you come to it saying, okay, then where's our differentiator? Like, how do we separate? Which, of course, is ultimately what the ABCDs are interested in.
I like that. I also was thinking, since you're in New York, have you ever been to or heard of the bar Amor y Amargo?
No.
I think this would be a great example for you. The guy who runs his Southern Teague, he has decided that he wanted to run a bar that the only possible drink you can get is like an old style, like solid, either a little bit of simple or all spirits. So Manhattan style, Negroni, world's largest collection of bitters, no citrus. You cannot order a margarita there. It is all bitters. It is all classic old style, straight booze cocktails. And that's it. So
and that has a perspective and a point of view.
Yeah.
It begs the question, right? I always say, in the book, I joke around about this. I joke about it all the time. Who's your restaurant for? People say everyone, which it's not. Your restaurant's not for everyone. There's people out there who just love, Cosmos or margaritas and like mojitos, and God love them. They're delicious drinks, and this just is not the place for you. But for somebody who's, going for a specific kind of thing, and, I think perspective and point of view is really important moving forward. We can't out Cheesecake Factory, the Cheesecake Factory, whether we're a bar, a restaurant, whatever. Like, we can't be all things to all people. Cheesecake Factory already is all things to most people.
Yes.
So for the rest of us, we can be quite successful by serving a small group in like unimaginably generous ways.
And, I think this was your book. Yeah, almost certain that you say it's almost more useful to define who it's for by defining who it's not for. So
that's right. That's exactly right. I
That
appreciate you
gentleman
bringing
with
that up.
The steak, very affordable value steak. He's not serving vegetarians. He just isn't. Yeah.
Nope. I went. So in the book, I talk about. So I was consulting pre-pandemic. I was consulting on a Greek steakhouse, which I loved. Like, have you ever seen a Greek steakhouse?
No.
So there was like no béarnaise, no peppercorn. Everything was sort of like yogurt-based sauces or like oils and herbs and everything. It was really, really cool. All the side dishes it had a point of view.
My parents-in-law and my wife, they're all Russian, so it's very similar cuisine when they do that. So I can get behind that for sure.
It was cool, and it had perspective. It had a point of view. But it was the problem is, the owners there were trying to speak to everyone. I said, it's not for everyone. And I tell the story because it was so obvious the day that I first met with him. And I got the job against his better judgment because we really did not get along. But he's saying everyone. And I said, it's not for everyone. And I said, look, it's dark. It's got loud music. And over his back shoulder, I said, I want you to look over your right shoulder. And he looked over his right shoulder. And there were 6 girls in a booth taking pictures of everything, taking pictures of themselves. It was like the dim lighting, and like loud music was like exactly what they wanted. And it was like 6:30 on a Thursday night. And like they were ready for the night. And then I said, now look over your left shoulder. And there was an older couple, probably in like their late 70s.
Probably pissed.
And they had their phones out. I mean, they had their phones out, with the flashlights trying to read. And they were like craning their ears to try to like hear each other. And I said, who's your restaurant for, them or them? If you just had to pick real quick. And he was like, well, yeah. But I said, no, that's my point though, is that like, that older couple's never going to come back, which is fine. They probably shouldn't have been here in the first place. But also, they're not going to speak very kindly about this place. And they're not going to have the words that you need to describe. Like, you know what? It's probably a great place, but just not for us. They're not going to say that. They're going to go, oh, I went there so loud and noisy and dark. And like food wasn't even that good, because the vibe is going to shade their experience of the food and the beverage. Meanwhile, the girls are going to be like, oh my God, we can't wait to go back. We got to they're going to tell everybody. So I don't want to fill the room with a bunch of people who aren't going to give me rave reviews. They're not going to have a great time. And I don't want to take care of people who aren't having a great time. And I also don't want to take care of people who aren't going to go rave afterwards. Like, that's when we talk about figuring out who your product is for by first figuring out who it's not for, that becomes a really important point to say and say, hey, listen, this is just like, if you like this, this, and this, I get it. Like there's a place down the street. It's just not us.
Sure. And I'm reminded, I heard him say it. It's probably been a couple of years. One of the Alex Hormozi sayings is, we don't get customers to make sales. You make sales to get customers. So you get the people in and then you just make sure they don't leave. The people that actually want to be there. Not the old cranky people, which there are restaurants for them.
It's so much of our business. I think one of the things, and I've got a whole section of the book dedicated to it, it's retention. Retention beats acquisition every single day. There's some statistic that says something like 80% of the diners in your room on any given night, it's their first time there, which is amazing. So your job is then to get those people back. Like if you can't get a meaningful percentage of them back, you got what's called a leaky bucket. So you can get them in, but if they're not coming back, it's, acquisition, right? They always say it's cheaper to keep a customer than to go find a new one. It's hard, it's time consuming, and it's expensive to find new customers. It's way easier to convince the people who came in and had a great time to simply come back, right? Hey, come back, bring your boyfriends next time, bring your friends, bring your parents, like just come back, right? The people that are having a great time, it becomes really easy to convince them to do so.
If you have to spend the money to fill the leaky bucket, that leads to the situation where you go get an MBA and try to figure out why no one's making money.
Yeah, it's I've spent a meaningful amount of time trying to get to the bottom of this, which is why I come up with these. I try to distill it down, come up with simple frameworks, simple ways to think about this, because doing it is not simple. Doing it is very hard. It's complicated and it's not easy at all.
Sure.
So like, let's have the strategy of it be somewhat simple to comprehend, so that we can spend all our real time just trying to find new tactics that work.
For sure, yeah. Now, I always use the example because it's something I struggle with of health. Very simple to be healthy: eat well, exercise. Hardest thing to do in America. There's all sorts of different tripwires all over the place.
Yep, I mean, there's the best diet book out there is 3 pages long, right? Eat right, turn the page, eat in moderation, turn the page, move your body. Like, that's it. I mean, I guess we could come up with a sequel to the book, which is like, hydrate and get a good night's sleep. But for the most part, it's eat well, turn the page, eat in a moderate amount, turn the page, move your body. Like, that's it. We all know it. Simple.
Simple, not easy.
Yeah, exactly.
We got through A through D. What about E? Is there anything about everything we didn't cover?
So we did A. So A is audience, right? Who has a problem you're uniquely qualified to solve. B, how is your brand, how is your product the solution to the problem? C is about competition, right? Who out there is trying to solve the same problem you are? That gives you a short list, right? If I get a steakhouse, I'm not competing against Sweet Green. I'm not competing against Chipotle. I'm not competing against IHOP. I'm not. I'm competing against other steakhouses or other upscale entities. So it's figuring out who's on the short list when you're considering, or when your guests are considering you and 4 or 5 others. And then that leads to D. D is differentiation, which is how do you separate yourself from the others in your category? So I got this steakhouse, but our place, blah, 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 right? We run, we've got a bar downtown, but we believe in a spirit forward focus, no citrus, no juices. We believe, in just bitters and spirits, and that's how we make our drinks. So it's coming up with, we're a bar, but we're this kind of bar. So A, B, C, D, right? Who has a problem you can solve? How does your product solve the problem? Who else is trying to solve the same problem? And how do you stand out? How do you separate yourself from the others in your category? And yeah, like you said, A, B, C, D leads to E. In the book, we talk about it. E stands for everything. You can either be overwhelmed by this or empowered by this. I choose to be empowered by it. Every choice you make communicates something to a guest or to a prospective guest. So everything from your logo, your price point, your menu, the lighting, the uniforms, the language you use to talk about your product, your website, on and on and on. Everything you do, and it sort of brings us to the next point, which is that like marketing is a series of little moves. It's tiny, it's incremental. It's not one big magic bullet. It's not one thing you do that gets people in. It's a series of little things. It's about meeting guests where they are. So if they check you out on Google, you need your Google dialed in. If they're going to go check you out on Yelp, you need your Yelp dialed in. If they're going to check you out on Instagram, your Instagram needs to be dialed in. If you're going to check out your website, if they're going to hear from word of mouth, you got to make sure every single person. So everything you do communicates something or gives people the words to use to talk about you. So it's just like, It all leads to that. And that's why we talk about it. It's the foundational piece, right? E then are all the various marketing channels. But you can't do everything until you've got that strong foundation of A, B, C, D, understanding who's got the problem, how you solve the problem, who else is trying to solve the problem, and ultimately why you think you're a more compelling solution than any of the alternatives out there.
I like that. Yeah, here's the foundation, go.
And so many people skip over the foundation, except the very best restaurants out there have a point of view. To your point, the bar, right? They have a point of view. They have a perspective. They know who they're for. They know who they're not for. They know how they're solving the problem for the kind of person who would love what they have. Like they know where they live and they know why they exist.
I like that. I like that kind of razor, that kind of viewpoint of every touch point is a chance to communicate something to the guest. Because in my mind, when I'm hearing that, I'm thinking, your methodology and sort of what you're trying to drive and show people is there's a real value and intentionality with these things. Like you want to be the one driving the car, not letting the car drive you. If you don't give your guests the kind of words to use to describe your spot, they're going to find some, and they may not be words you want,
I want to just stay on that for just a second, because what you said is so profound. I've opened a lot of restaurants in my career, and we spend a lot of time thinking about the physical space, about like how we're going to use it, how people are going to exist in the space. But on day one, we open the doors and we let guests in. It doesn't matter what we thought or how we thought they were going to use it. They're going to use it with the way that they most believe it should be used.
Sometimes in wildly surprising ways.
You're right, but in wildly surprising ways. So you're clogging the aisle. You're like, you can't stand at service bar. I mean, all these different things. They're going to use it in the way that we see that they see fit. So you better do your best to get them to where you need them to go, to be and to talk about you in the way that you want to be talked about. And that's about all you can do, because once you give it away, it's not your place anymore, it's theirs, right? And we know this, like the very best restaurants in the world, people have a real sense of ownership of it. That's my favorite restaurant, right? That's my restaurant. I own it. It's like, it's my favorite restaurant. Like that trumps
mine.
They have a deeper sense of ownership. And I think about it. I mean, my wife and I, there was years ago when I was like opening restaurants, there was a period of time, like 4 years, when we only ever had one day off together because of our schedules. And it was Sundays. And we always used to go to Danny Meyer's restaurant, Gramercy Tavern. It's right in the heart of the Gramercy, Flatiron area. It's on 20th Street, and we would just always go and sit at the bar, and we would sit at the bar for like 4 hours. And it's how we would catch up on our entire week. And we would sit and have a cocktail and have like a little bite, and then like have a glass of wine and have a couple more bites, and then have another glass of wine and have like a dessert or some cheese or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that would take like 4 hours. We had such a sense of ownership. Danny didn't have that experience. We had that experience. We knew our bartenders on a first name basis. Like we knew the AGM who ran the restaurant on Sunday nights. We we had this deep sense of connection, and still maintain a deep connection to that restaurant and the experience that we had, because for 4 years, that was our date night. That's how we connected every week. And it was really the only way that we really had meaningful connection. So like Danny doesn't own that. We own that. Mm-hmm. And so we give it away and people use it and take it on as their own.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have the same experience. The place I studied when I was getting ready for my certified somms, right down the street, walk there, boxcar, great green chili cheeseburger, if I remember, like always had different features, affordable, easy, it does make me wonder though, we have that sense of ownership. But in your instance, there is someone, Danny Meyer, who rented the space, who hired and trained the bartenders, who set up the kitchen. It's mm-hmm. interesting. You have to have someone who is providing for the opportunity for that ownership. You have to set it up. Yeah.
Now, here's a couple of things, right? So Danny Meyer is probably a great example here because he's somebody who does this so well. But notice, I didn't talk about, so in the front room of Gramercy Tavern, everything comes off the wood-burning stove. When you walk in, you can't help but smell fresh firewood being burned. They have fresh flowers everywhere. So what you smell when you walk in is fresh flowers and the firewood, right? I didn't say anything about that when I told you. Everything is sort of like simple and elegant quality products, but I didn't even talk about the food. right? I told you cocktail and wine, but I didn't talk about the thoughtful cocktail program. I didn't talk about now. Danny and his team care deeply about their cocktail program and the wine program and the beers that they curate and the menu they put together. But I told my version of the story, right?
Mhm.
Now, as a restaurant person, somebody who's made a career in this, the fact that I chose that place over any other place in New York City probably communicates something to somebody listening to it. But I told my own version and not necessarily what Danny would have said, except what Danny really cares about is places that are fully inhabited by people connecting. And so he teaches service as if we're hugging all of our guests. Like that was sort of woven into, I think, how I told the story. So everything that Danny does, or Danny and his team by extension, are setting this up or making environments that want to be returned to, but also the kind of places that people want to talk about. But again,
Like right now.
I didn't talk about anything except that this place was very, very near and dear to us, and it was special. And you can infer, like, man, it's the kind of place that just let Deuce sit at the bar for 4 hours, running up $115 check. That's not a lot in New York City at a bar, right? Like, it's like they really want to be generating, I don't know, $120 an hour per chair at the bar. But we sat there and we held those up for a long time, and they were like totally cool with it. Like, did I say that out loud? No, but that's woven into the fabric of like what a generous place he built. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. The only thing I'll push back on that, just because I and I don't even know if this point's worth making. Would you have chosen that place had he not given all that forethought?
Oh, sure.
Do you almost have to reach a certain bar where, like, yes, it has to be this high to ride this ride. It has to be this excellent to get people in to care about it, and then it's on you to fall in love and find it.
I think you're totally right, and I think you make a really great point. I'll close this little piece by saying, I have been in restaurants for 25 years. I know a great deal about food, wine, spirits, beer, and even I don't speak a lot about the food, the wine, the beer. Like I talk about the service. I talk about the way I was treated. I talk about the flourishes that were over the top. And that's not just true with Gramercy. That's true for low-key places all the way up to the very best restaurant that I've ever been to in my life. I think most people don't know a lot about food and wine and can't articulate what it is they're tasting but they know the way they feel, Thomas Keller talks a lot about this too, right? Why put together a 10-course tasting menu where nobody has any choices? His whole point was, I want people to feel totally taken care of. So he was coming at it from a place of generosity, not about being restrictive. But he said, that's my job. Like, let me take care of you. You don't have to worry about anything. If you've chosen to come here, you're in great hands, and just sit back, relax, and connect. And he talks about over the course of his cookbook, that a great meal is meant to, take the conversation in lots of different ways, that the food, even at a 3 Michelin star level, should never be the focus. The food should still be the conduit, the thing that creates better human connection. And he's built restaurants, and certainly French Laundry and Per Se, sort of are evidence of that. Well, yes, it's technique at a very high level. It's not what it's about. It's not oh man, you can really taste the sear on this. It's not. This is amazing, and how lucky we are that I get to share this with you.
For sure. Yeah. I do agree too, and I think it's important to keep in mind that the assumption in this day and age, whether it's the French Laundry or a fried chicken joint or a sushi shop, like, is that the food at bare minimum is good for what it is too. If your claim to fame in your restaurant is our food is good, it's like saying you're putting out a movie when it's like, no, it's in English. You can hear them very clearly and you can see the actors in every scene. It's like, bare minimum, you should be able to do those things, but you probably need a little more that differentiation part.
Yep.
Yeah.
I always talk about quality is subjective, right? So quality is not a good descriptor. It's not a good way for us to talk about the product because it's on a sliding scale. So it's either terrible, it's bad, it's okay, it's good, it's great, it's exceptional. So we can only move it up and down on one scale. And again, the danger is that it's largely subjective. So if I say, hey, do you like steakhouses? And then you say, yeah, I love steakhouses. Like, oh, cool. I just opened a steakhouse. Come check it out. And the guest says, oh, I would, but I don't eat steak that much. And when I go, I really love this place down the street. I've been going there for 10 years and everybody knows me. And I really love that. I mean, tell me, why should I come to yours? You're like, oh, well, I know that place down the street and ours is better. Like, how do we define better? It's better quality, therefore more expensive. It's a broader list. It's more variety. It's got when I say it's a better wine list, what do I mean by better? Meaning it's cheaper, it's more approachable,
more extensive,
it's esoteric, more expensive. I've got hard to find bottles. I've got, unique labels. How am I defining better? So better, right? That quality description turns out to be not that descriptive after all. So if I say, oh, you got to come check out my steakhouse. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. So listen, it's not expensive. It's all bistro cuts. It's this guy who's French, who's like just cooking it really, really great. Everything comes out medium rare. They don't take temperature on anything. And if that's what you like, you're going to love this. Like immediately, people are listening to this and going, no, when I go to a steakhouse, I really want all the pomp and circumstance. I want the linen. I want a really big bottle of red.
Unsubscribe, yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. But then you find other people that are like, yeah, you know what? I love steak, but I just can't afford to do it as much. So I'd love to come check out that place. Really good steak, really well cooked, but affordable. Sign me up. You find your raving fans.
For sure. Well, Chip, we didn't get into more than 10% of the book, and we're getting close to time. For the listener at home, where could they go to find out more about you, find out what you're doing, and follow you in the upcoming year?
Yep. So you can go to restaurantstrategypodcast.com. That's sort of the hub. You can find the book there. You can learn more about the coaching there. You can link through to the podcast there. That's sort of the hub of what we do. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram. It's just Restaurant Strategy. Find us all over the place. But really the website is the place that'll punch you to a lot of different places.
Awesome. Super jealous that you got the Restaurant Strategy. It's 2 great words to own on all social media, so congratulations.
7 years ago, although I can't get the website, restaurantstrategy.com is owned by somebody, and man, if you're listening, I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah.
I tried to go through a broker and they wanted $750,000, and I said, I think you have a fundamental misunderstanding of my bank account, but thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's why we got restaurantstrategypodcast.com.
It's either some like just squatter who's just waiting, digital squatter, waiting for Cisco to come and say hi, or
That's right.
No.
That's right. Cisco, it's all yours, buddy.
Considering that my website's servesyouRightPod.com, I have a similar issue. So
Yep.
It is what it is. What a world. Chip Klose, thanks for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
It was a pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
That's the show, my friends. Thank you for listening to Serves You Right. If you have not checked it out, go to servesyouRightPod.com to see what we're up to, see old episodes, and so much more. All right, I'll see you next time.